What's going on, guys? The podcast with Scotty Phillips is an interesting one. We want to advise that the following content is for mature audiences only, 18 plus years and older, as it does contain mature themes and content. We also want to advise that the platform podcast does not condone these experiences or endorse any of these experiences without reprisal of judgment, and recognize the experience of these people they interview and any other parties involved as their experiences. This podcast does get a bit crazy, guys, but it does show that no matter how bad it gets, people can change, and the depths that Scotty goes to really highlights his journey and shows the insight to what was going on in his habits. And it's a really interesting podcast, guys. As always, enjoy. This is the Platform Podcast with B-Bad and Brandon. And we are recording.
Sick.
So, well, we fucked that up already. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, we didn't. That was distancing.
We didn't touch each other. Welcome to the Platform Podcast. We are your hosts, Brandon Greco and
Jonny, be bad.
And we welcome very special guest today, Scotty Phillips. How are you, mate?
I'm well today, boys. How are you?
Yeah, good, mate.
And whereabouts are you? You're on the moon?
I'm on the moon. I'm socially distant, but I'm really in Bangkok.
Yep.
Oh, you're in Bangkok. Oh, yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's the time difference thing we talked about.
Yeah, I know, but you didn't tell me where he was, or you said there was a time difference.
Turns out not much of a time difference.
3 hours.
Yeah, sweet.
That's not too bad at all.
You been doing much today, bro?
Well, we can't do much. We're in lockdown here. So,
yeah. What's that look like for you guys?
It looks like me sneaking out every day to do a bit of jiu-jitsu in the mate's living room where we snuck some mats in.
Yep.
And I was doing a little bit of lifting until the locals started to rat us out for sneaking to the gym.
Oh,
and,
really? Fuckers.
Yeah. So it's pretty full on here. There's 100% mask uptake, and you have to get thermometer tested to get into most buildings, and touch something outside and you hand sanitize, and everyone's right on it, which is good.
Yeah. That's kind of how it has to be, bro. That's good, isn't it?
It's how it has to be, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's annoying.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. Now, man, I've known you for quite a while now. I was trying to work out how long the other day, but right back early jiu-jitsu days when you first started or I first started. I can't remember who was there first.
I think you beat me to jiu-jitsu by 6 months or so.
Yeah, sweet. So, man, that's like 7 or 8 years now, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, good times.
Yeah, absolutely. And absolutely love beating each other up. I think that was a highlight for us. I do miss that. And I have set a goal, and you'll be happy with this. I was getting into a bit of jits with old Dr. Paul there for a bit, and there was talk of coming back to it this year, but stupid COVID means that we're not supposed to cuddle each other at the moment.
Yeah, I can't imagine there'd be anything worse for COVID than angry hugging.
Yeah. Some pajama fighting. So, bro, man, tell us a little bit about yourself. We're going to hit you with something pretty big now. You're going to only have 21 words to answer the question. It's going to be who you are and what you do. Brando is going to count those words because I'm not allowed to count. And it all sounds accounted within those 21 words. Are you ready? Go.
I am a derivatives trader, and I build trading systems.
10. That's it. That's 12 words.
That's our first one of those.
Really simple. Nice and to the point. I like it.
How'd you get into something like that, bro?
Well, it's a funny story. I went to prison for the second time when I was 31, and I'd been a criminal my whole life, like a career criminal, in and out of jail, and like I think 34 violent felony charges, and drug dealing and drug manufacture, and I made porn, and I did a lot of loan sharking, and more or less any sort of crime that you could possibly imagine, except killing people.
Yep.
And sex crimes.
And
then I was going to jail, and I realized as I was waiting to go to jail, I ended up in this lunch with John Howard, the Prime Minister, and it was just this really awkward thing. Like, I thought it was going to be like a big thing with a couple of hundred people, and I ended up in this room having lunch with John Howard and like 10 other people, and he's going around the room asking everyone, "What do you do? And what do you do?" And they're coming up to me, and I'm like, "The fuck do I say?" I'm like, "Oh, sell a bit of porn, do a bit of credit card fraud, this and that, a few hustles on the go, like." And at that moment, I realized that I really would like an actual career and not just like an endless series of petty crimes to be my life. And so I ended up going to jail, which was obvious because I was guilty as hell. And for kidnapping and torturing my enemies. And then I was in jail, and I used that time. I decided to upskill myself, and I did a postgraduate qualification in what I do now, and then I read a lot of books, so I had a lot of time, and then I got out and I tried to do it for real, and I sucked at it. And I was like busted myself off and lost the money that I put in, and then tried again and sucked again, and after a couple of years, I kind of started to figure it out, and I realized I needed some help, and I got better mentors, and one thing led to another, and 5 years later, I was earning a living from it, and I guess what I started in 27, so 13 years later, I'm okay at it, I guess.
Yep. And you're doing you're even doing some courses in education yourself now, aren't you?
Yeah, I mentor a few people, and I've got some courses which sell, but that's kind of a small part of the deal, right? That pays my living expenses, so I like it.
Yeah. I think there's some good stories there. I don't think we go all the way back to start with yet, but how the hell do you end up at a lunch with the Prime Minister and 9 other people?
Well, that's also a funny story.
Yeah.
So I was bribing this Liberal Party politician to help me rezone properties for some other guy that I was, it was some sort of shady deal where I was helping someone rezone it. Having a property rezoned from rural to residential just doubles the value of the thing, right?
Yep.
And politicians can help with stuff like that. And yeah, this politician helped me, and at the end of it, he was like working around to like the bit where he hits you up for the bribe, and he was like, "Oh, would $2,000 be too much to ask?" I'm like, what? $2,000 for something that's gonna, it's gonna be like a couple $100,000 worth more actually to the value of a property. I was like, yeah, sure. And by the way, we can do this again, right?
Yep.
And then eventually, there was other politicians who also had their hands out.
Yep.
And eventually, the people who I never realized politicians were for sale so cheap. Like I always assumed it would be big money to own them, but it's like, It's really cheap, pocket change, right?
Yep.
And so eventually they had this, enough people who bribe politicians. So they call it donations, but it's a bribe. Yep. It's like you give me money, and then when you need a favor later on, I do you that favor. That's how it works. Apparently, I didn't know. And anyway, they just invited me to this, and yeah, it was it. And I was actually later on, years later, I was in jail.
Yeah.
And one of the things that happens in jail is the newspaper comes every day, and they cut out the front page of the newspaper because I was on it, and it was leading up to the election in 07, like Kevin 07.
Yeah.
And they cut out the front page of the newspaper, and one of the guards let it slip that it was because something in it was about one of the inmates. Yep. And the only possible reason they could do that is if there was something about someone informing on someone else. So the rumor around the jail was, Scott must have informed on someone. He must be a rat, and he's a dog, and it was a very, very stressful couple of days. And
fuck, that would have been intense in prison like that.
Oh, dude, it was a hectic couple of days until I sorted it out, and got copies of the paper and see.
Holy fuck. Yeah, I'm not ratting anyone out. I was just having lunch with the PM, no big deal.
I was just having lunch with him, and yeah.
Damn, that's insane. And how did this all start for you, bro? Where did you kick things off? Like you said, with the porn industry and stuff like that. Was that early days for you?
It was a funny story.
I feel like these are all funny stories now that we look back in hindsight. At the time, you're probably like, fuck.
So I was like mid-90s. I was like, I was a drug dealer living in West End, and I had a pager.
Yep.
And I had a little system. You could put in your phone number and then like a number code for the drug, like one was pot, two was this, and then the amount value you wanted. And someone would come over to your house like 20 minutes later. It was a 24-hour-a-day drug delivery service in West End. It was revolutionary at its time.
Yep.
And I started doing it when I was like in second year uni. And then by the time I'd finished uni, it wasn't a small business anymore. It was a massive business with like lots of employees and I'm sure you can tell just by looking at me, but I went to law school and I finished law school and I didn't look like a lawyer. I looked like a thug. And I couldn't get a job as a lawyer. And
but you could get a job as a thug.
I was just a fairly passable thug at the time, and so I kept doing that.
Yep.
And at one point, I became partners with this guy called Greg Lazzarato, and he had a computer shop, and we both had computer shops there. And one of the things that happens when you're drug dealers, people come and sell you stolen shit, and so you know all these thieves basically.
Yep.
And Lazzarato was partners with these guys in an internet company, an ISP, early days dial-up ISP, and they'd ripped him off. And so he wanted me to rip them back off for him. So I just sent some of these guys in to break into their place of business and steal their servers, which they did. And they came back, and Lazzarato had a computer shop, so he would sell them back their own computer in a different case. And we thought it was like these are like $20,000 machines in the 90s, and he would just take all the parts out and put them in a new case format, the hard drive, and sell them their own shit back. And they'd think, oh, we needed it so urgently, thank you so much. And we did this like 3 times. And the third time, we thought, why don't we just check what's on the hard drive? And there was just because these guys were stealing from him in the business that he was a shareholder in. And we checked, and they were making $2,000 a day from this thing called Cindy's.com.au. And we looked it up and went, these motherfuckers doing porn. and well, if they can make $2,000 a day, why can't we?
Yep.
And why not? And so we found some people who are web developers where we got the money to start it from is a whole other funny story. But anyway, we started this thing, and the first day we turned it on, it made $5,000 US.
Jesus.
And, no advertising, no money, and we figured it out later that it was at the exact the week before we opened it, America passed this thing called the Communications Decency Act banning online porn. So online porn was banned in America, and we just opened up a porn site in Australia, and it just exploded. And you know, I was 21 years old, and I was a millionaire within a couple of months. And I went back and I told my mother, Mum, I made $1 million on the internet. And her first word was, what's the internet? It was like,
holy.
No one knew what the internet was.
Fuck, that would have been a wild couple of months kicking things off like that.
Well, and it grew. And then and I was partners with this guy, Lazzarato, who's like kind of a well-known guy around town back in the 90s. And we went over to America in 98 to visit this guy who was like, they called him the fantasy man. He was he's a big shot in the real adult industry. Like he was a ex-CEO of Hustler, and he was the biggest phone sex guy in America. And you know, but like your classic LA porn mogul guy. And he was big shotting himself in LA when he met us and showing us how much money he made and how cool his stuff was. And he had this Dodge Viper and you know, there's chicks everywhere. And then he opened up his statistics and we had like, I think we had like 20,000 members at that stage. And he opened up his and he said, look guys, we've got 25,000 members. And Lazzarato and I looked at each other and we're like, holy fuck, like without even trying, we're almost as big as the biggest in the world. And then at that moment we thought, well, why can't we be? Why can't we be? And a few other guys came along in as well. There was another guy called Dean Shannon, who's the guy who owns ladbrokes.com.au now.
Yep.
And there was another guy, there's a couple other guys anyway, there's like half a dozen of us. And we
Yep.
all became really successful in this, and we were all mates. And at one
Yep.
stage, by 1999, Brisbane was turning out 35% of the whole world's pornography.
Yeah,
And-
fucked. Really?
Yeah,
All thanks to
Brisbane-
you boys.
Brisbane was the epicenter of late 90s porn world. And and then it all came unstuck for me personally, because I used to shoot up crystal meth every day. And in retrospect, that was probably a poor choice.
Yep.
And I wouldn't recommend doing that. And I certainly wouldn't recommend doing it every day.
Yep.
And when you do, you probably go insane, because shooting up crystal meth is like shooting up mental illness. And
Jesus.
yeah, and at the end, it just got really weird for me. Like, what I'm like. I'm a moderately dangerous guy,
Yep.
and it makes you really frightened. I was too frightened to go outside without a gun and a knife. And
Really?
I was in my car, and I'd always be thinking helicopters are following me, and
Jesus.
Oh, fuck.
and I'd been arrested for assaulting police before, so anytime I got arrested for anything, I used to get arrested all the time. Anytime
right.
I got arrested, I'd get arrested by the SWAT team. Like
They'd bring
used to
everyone
push
in.
They did shit like, out of helicopters down the lines, and screeching the car in front of my car, and guys running out. It was terrifying. I used to constantly feel like I was being followed by police and
Yep.
about to get violently arrested, because I often was. Like this
Yep.
happened like more than 10 times.
They weren't just coming up to you and knocking on the window nicely saying, "Oh, Mr. Phillips, will you come with us for a little bit, please?"
Well, I was just like an easy target, like
Yep.
like I was a junkie. So anytime you came near me, there's just a 90% chance that I'm doing something wrong.
Yep.
Like it's just a free win for them. Like, how about we go? You want to bust someone? Yeah, why not? Let's go get Scott. He's right there. And eventually, and so what happens in Australia when you're the last time when I knew I was really going to jail, like there was no getting out of it this time.
Yep.
Like I'd got suspended sentences, and I'd got all kinds of things, all kinds of wiggle room before, and short sentences in jail.
Yep.
And the last time I knew I was for the high jump, and they do this thing called concurrent sentencing, where if you get convicted for like 20 different things, you only do the biggest sentence. So if you
Really?
get a 10-year and 5 lots of 2 years and a 3-year and an 8-year, they don't get added on. You just do the 10. And
Yep.
so it was like a get out of jail free pass. Like it's like a buy one get one free. And so for these last couple of years, anyone who annoyed me, I'd just punch it in the face.
Because you knew you
Like
couldn't get any more time.
I couldn't get any more time. And I had this insane thing against, the stop-go dudes at the roadworks. Stop, go. And multiple times, because I was insane. Like I was on meth. I was completely insane. And so I would get out of my car, stopped at roadworks, and feel like they were inconveniencing me, and grab the guy, pick off him, and then beat him up, and then get back in my car and run away.
Yep.
And cops would turn up to my office and say he's done it again, and I'd be hiding somewhere in the back of the office or under a desk or something, and my lawyers would call him up and say, "Oh, look, it was a company car. It probably wasn't him. Do you have a photo? Can't be sure. A lot of people drive that car." And they're like, it's again. It's just like the third time. Same fucking thing. And there was a number of just idiotic, like idiotic crimes like that I did. And I used to leave my. They came up to my house I was living at Mount Nebo, and they walked in one day. I'd left the door unlocked, and so the cops can walk in if you leave it unlocked. And I left it unlocked because I was too high to shut my door on the way out of home. And there was like a pistol on the coffee table and a bong and like needles everywhere. And they'd left a little note with a list of all my illegal shit that they found, and a little note, you have to come down to the police station. And I just went on the run, and for like 8 months until they caught me, I was just like hiding. Like
really?
I'd stayed. Yeah.
In Brisbane or just here and there?
Yeah, I lived at Dockside. I got someone else to rent an apartment at Dockside, so it wasn't in my name. And I had phones that weren't in my name. And you know, the cops would always be hanging out at my office, like outside. And I'd just have to sneak in every day. And this went on for months. And something in my insane mind, I thought that this was a sustainable model for life. And I just
You could do this forever.
I'm making plenty of money. Like, what's the big deal? Like, what's the big deal? Like, we can do this. They're not going to catch me. I'm the roadrunner.
Now, from memory, that house at Mount B was pretty epic, wasn't it? That house you had at Mount Nebo.
Yeah, Mount Nebo was. I built it when I was insane. So it was what a mental patient would build. It was we called it the Fortress of Solitude. So it had like concentric. It was on 60 acres at Mount Nebo, and it had like a 30-foot high concrete wall around it, and then concentric rings of razor wire and a couple of other layers of fences, and it's covered in cameras, and I was armed to the teeth sitting in there shooting up crystal meth and waiting for the cops to come and get me, because they often would. And surprisingly enough, it wasn't a very good way to live.
No. Didn't you I'm sure you told me some stories about they'd be chasing you to your house, and then you had the big gates or something, and you would just shut the gates behind them or something, and then they couldn't get in on you.
Oh yeah, and then it got worse too, because I was like, I used to drive a black Ferrari, right? And so completely inconspicuous. I was like,
no one sees that.
Insane, violent meth addict driving a black Ferrari. And I don't know if you know Mount Nebo, but as you come out of the gap, the Waterworks Road becomes Mount Nebo Road, and there's only one road in and out. And I didn't have a license, and I'd been caught driving unlicensed, and the cops used to just wait down the bottom and wait for me to go past, and I'd just hit the gas and just run away from them. And then I'd get up to my house, and I had two gates. Like I'd have one gate that you could get in, and then a second gate, and I would leave the second gate open, drive in, shut the first gate. Cops would come in, and then I'd shut the other car behind them. So they're stuck with their car stuck. And they'd have to call a tow truck to get their own car out, and they'd be buzzing on my intercom, and I'd be pretending I wasn't there, and I had a little walking track down from Mount Nebo down to Sanford. I used to just like take off and walk down to Sanford and get a taxi from there, which is like 45 minutes drive away. But in a straight line, it's nothing. And so you can imagine they lost patience really, really quickly with me just being just a complete dick about this. And and you know, as time went on, cops who'd taken an interest in me became more and more determined to see me put in prison. And it was eventually obvious that they were probably going to win and I was probably going to lose. And
and you started trying to make some decisions to take a different direction. What was your first trip to prison like? That would have been a bit scary, or at the time you weren't thinking too much about it?
My first trip to prison, I was like 20 years old. So this wasn't like new territory for me, and you know, I'd had a lengthy record, but prison is still scary. Like it's not as much fun as it sounds. It's funny, prison, the things that annoy you are not the things that you think would annoy you, like strip searches and communal showers and violence and things like that. That all washes over you. It's the small things, like having I don't know, like having to wait and ask permission to go from one side of the jail to the other. Or, you know, just the small everyday indignities, like hearing your name on a buzzer and have to go up and do what they tell you. Like just the everyday banality of jail life is what's annoying. It's the actual, like it's no different than quarantine in theory, just with worse food, right? Yeah,
worse food. What were you eating back? What were they giving you to eat there in prison, bro? Wouldn't have been much.
Another funny story. So I had the only sort of control I could exert over my surroundings was the control to put the food that I wanted into my body. So you're allowed to buy have a thing called buy-ups where you list the food that you want and you can pay for it out of $100 a week. And I would buy $100 a week worth of tuna, and for 548 days in a row, I ate tuna for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and post-workout. Nothing
Really?
but tuna. Nothing but tuna.
Like you would have been shredded, bro.
I was shredded. I was 74 kilos when I walked out the door. I had like abs with the striations on the side.
Yep.
I lasted about 6 weeks. 6 weeks later.
But you were living that keto life before it was even popular, mate.
Yeah.
So, what was training like in there? Was there a bit of gym access and stuff, or?
Training was excellent. Best training I've ever done. No weights. Things like fake TRX machines made out of plaited tracksuit pants and mop buckets with curls with mop buckets and a broom between them, and squats with like a totem pole of guys sitting on your shoulders and another one on each shoulders hanging on the side of the wall. Bench press with a guy standing on your hands.
Yep.
It was all day training. It was like, 4 to 6 hours a day of training.
Sweet. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's and my training bros from there are still great friends with me. Like I spoke to one of them yesterday. Make really good friends, don't you?
That's sweet. Like you almost have to, right?
Well, you can't have too many friends, right? Because like if I'm in jail and if I've got a problem with you and you're friends with him, then I'm not going to have a problem with him. And if he's tougher than you, then I'll just go straight to the point and knock him out first rather than wait time. So if you have like 20 friends, you've got 20 potential problems. You can only have 3 or 4 friends in jail.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. That's all you can really afford because you can't on anyone's problems, right?
Fuck. And you just keep, and like you said, your friend, you still keep in touch with some of those guys today?
Well, one of them's back in for murder, but that was always going to happen because he's a murderer.
Yep. Fuck. Oh, hectic, bro. And you've done some martial arts and stuff before, because obviously jiu-jitsu, I know, and kung fu before. Where did that all kick off for you?
When I was 17, I was a drug dealer, and I got first time I took LSD.
Yep.
I got the crap beaten out of me by some Islander gentlemen, and I was tripping balls on acid. Like it was just a frightening thing. And a couple of days later, I was out of hospital and up and around. I was determined that wasn't going to happen to me again.
Yep.
So I just got completely obsessed with. I found the best kung fu school I could, and just went there. Like did that like 4 or 5 hours a day until that was never going to happen to me again. The idea was that I could get tough enough that I wouldn't be scared anymore. But what happened to me is that I got to be a good fighter, and I was still scared. And it was like the rationale for what I was doing didn't fit the outcome that I got. Like the idea, the psychological idea behind being a good fighter is so you don't have to be scared of anyone.
Yep.
But I just kept getting more and more scared, and I chose a drug. I don't know if you've ever used meth, but it makes you so frightened, frightened. Right. And I was a little boy in a man's body, and I was a scared and frightened little boy, and I'd become a scared and fearful man. And I used to use a drug that made me really frightened.
Fuck.
Like really, really frightened. And so my life was just completely full of fear.
Yeah.
And when I went to jail, I became friends with this guy. He was another funny story. So this guy was probably Australia's biggest heroin trafficker. He was like metric tons of heroin guy, like literally caught with 1,000 kilos. And he also founded the Narcotics Anonymous program in Australia. And so his whole life was about helping people get clean off drugs.
Yep.
And he was, this like, all that underbelly show. He literally mates with every person on that show. He's that guy. And so he was that guy, and his total passion was helping people get clean off drugs. And he was the first person I spoke to when I ended up at Woodford Prison. And we were doing bench press one day, and he was standing on my hands and was bench pressing him, and I've got track marks because I'm a junkie. Yeah. And he looked, he said, "Oh, Scott, I didn't know you were a junkie." And I was like, "How dare you call me a junkie?" And we almost came to blows.
Yeah.
And he's a scary, scary guy. He was like, very scary man. And I just wanted to kill him. Like, how dare you call me a junkie? And I was like, well, how'd you get the track marks then if you're not a junkie? I'm like, well, that's a good question. And so anyway, he became my sponsor in this Narcotics Anonymous program.
So that was a big turning point for you at that moment.
That was the turning point in my life. So
Yep.
so what happened is he lied to me and told me that I'd get parole easier if I did this program.
Yep.
And so I turned up to this Narcotics Anonymous meeting in jail, and there was this old, really like your classic, spent my whole life in jail guy. There's like face tattoos with the teardrops and the whole bit, like a scary dude. And he stood up and said, "My name's so and so, and I'm an addict." And I could just see this wave of relief wash over it. Like it was like, yeah, I could. And I thought, well, why don't I try that? And the first time I actually said, "My name's Scott, and I'm a drug addict," and actually felt like, oh, you know what? Maybe my problem was that I'm a drug addict. Like it was to me, it seemed like I had legal problems, I had relationship problems, I had friend problems, I had financial problems, I had problems with the tax office, I had every sort of problem you'd want to name, but it never really occurred to me that maybe I had a little drug problem.
And if you knock that out, then all the other problems might just disappear.
And so what happened is that when I stopped taking drugs, I was left with the reasons why I used to take the drugs.
Yep.
So, and it turns out that the reasons that most junkies shoot up drugs are real reasons. Like, I was like you guys. I had dreams and hopes, and I wanted to do stuff with my life too. I didn't want to just hurt people, and then somehow I got off track, and there was reasons for that, and the reasons were primarily that I was afraid to feel the feelings that used to come up for me, and there was a lot of trauma in my life and a lot of how do I put it? The things. There was this existential pain of living in my own skin, which I used to medicate with drugs, and then I used to do things on drugs, which made me feel really shameful. And the shameful things I used to do on drugs, I really had to medicate by taking more drugs. And I would try and fill the hole in myself with external things. Like I would make money, I would drive a fast car, I would date beautiful girls, I would have a big house, and none of it even touched the sides in terms of me still feeling deep down like a piece of shit.
Yep.
And, and it was a problem it was like a hole that I kept digging. And it was only when I went to jail, which was the best thing that ever happened to me. I went to jail and I started digging. And I started to address not that I was taking drugs. Like it's a trivial thing to stop taking drugs.
Yep.
But what's difficult is to address the reasons why you took the drugs, especially if they were good reasons, you know. And so what that's given me is I don't live with the fear I used to.
That's
like
unreal.
I used to be terrified that of all kinds of stuff, and all the stuff that I was terrified of came to happen, and none of it was bad.
Man, that's unreal. And you've from what I know as well, you've been able to help a few other people as well, haven't you? Get through those sort of problems themselves, and you have a little bit of work to do with that sort of space still, don't you?
Well, that's how it works, right? Like, addiction is primarily a thing about selfishness. Like, how do I get what I want? How do I make myself feel the way that I want to feel? How about me? What can I get out of it? How can I feel better? How can I control my feelings?
Yep.
The cure for selfishness is just to go do something for someone else. And like someone who's not your friend or not someone that you get something out of, or you know, just go and help someone else.
Yep.
And I'd never done that in my whole life for any reason at all. I'd never helped anyone unless there was a payoff for me. And my whole ideas about how relationships worked were that they were transactional. You know, even with women, it'd be like, I date you and you do this thing that I like, or with friends, it was very transactional for me. And setting aside that and becoming an actual person that you can have an actual relationship with was surprisingly difficult.
Yep. Yeah, wow. Man, that's pretty cool. That sort of story there, getting through all that sort of stuff. Must feel amazing to be on the other side of it now.
Well, sometimes, but I find there's flaws in the fundamental nature of reality. This whole living thing can be powerfully unpleasant from time to time, you know?
Yeah.
It's better than it was, but
Yep.
feelings hurt. Like the reason that I used to use drugs is because feelings hurt.
Yep. But now you've got better ways of processing and getting through them. And
It's turning to the basic philosophy of every problem that you have, like in jiu-jitsu. How do you get out of a choke? You turn into it. You know, how do you you're going through hell, what do? You keep going. How do you deal with uncomfortable feeling? You keep going until you're out the other side. Turning and running from it just has never worked for me in any way, shape or form, in any aspect of my life since I was a little kid, and yet that was the strategy that I chose as my go-to.
It's an easy option, isn't it?
Well, all it was just a failed strategy of life that I didn't have the insight to see was failing, and I kept doing it. Like a rat trapped, you know, just keep doing the same thing.
Yep. Damn, cool, man.
So my first day in jail was pretty funny.
What's that like?
So when you the final, so being on bail and on trial, it lasts a long time. Like there's like 5 or 6 different court appearances, and you're wearing a suit, and I was wearing a nice suit, and everyone treats you with respect when you're in the courthouse.
Yep.
Like even the prosecutor calls you Mr. Phillips, and they shake your hand, and the lawyers are different, and you feel like you're like this isn't so bad, like this is rough, but I'm going through it, and I'm an equal of the lawyers. And then the judge slams his gavel down and is guilty, remanded for sentencing. And then they've got an internal elevator in the Supreme Court, and they pull you downstairs, and like 5 seconds after you're in this nice, quiet, air-conditioned courtroom, you're in a jail underneath the Supreme Court building, and there's all these old school, like British style army screws, and they just beast you. Like they just totally beat you, and they're yelling and screaming and slapping you. There's like 6 guys slapping you and tearing your clothes off, and get your clothes off, get your clothes off, get your clothes off. And you're standing there buck naked with your pants around your ankles, and they make you lean over like to sign a thing with your lean over instead of step up, and you're off balance. They're slapping you, and it's just humiliating. It's like 15 seconds ago, I was in this nice, everyone was treating me like I was a real human being.
Yep.
And people I've never met didn't say a word to me, just kick the shit out of you. And then you're in these like perspex cells below the jail, and they put you in a bus, like a prison bus that goes around to all the watch houses, and they take you to the watch house in the city. And I was in the watch house in the city, and there was a cell with 9 guys. Wow. And there were these 2 Vietnamese heroin addicts that they brought in, and you know, smart crims who are junkies, they bring up gear in their ass. And so one of these guys had a syringe up his ass, and the other guy had a whole assortment of drugs up his ass. And it'd been a long day for me. Like I really, really wanted to get high. And this guy was constipated, because heroin addicts get constipated, and he was asking for help for someone to get the drugs out of his butt. And this seemed like a fucking great deal to me. All you have to do is just pull these drugs out of this guy's ass, and
you're good to go.
I couldn't do it. Shit was blocked up tight, and there was like 3 or 4 different guys had to go, and I would block the camera in the cell and stand so the screw couldn't see us, and then anyway, long story cut short. Eventually the drugs, after about 45 minutes, the drugs came out of this guy's ass, and another guy had a syringe that he cut down into being ass size, and
syringe.
And 5 guys who didn't know each other shot up drugs that had came out of a guy's butt using the same syringe with water out of a prison toilet. And I was looking at them, and they're like, "Do you want some, bro?" And I'm like, it's like, yeah, really. I never wanted anything so bad in my life. And it was Subutex. It wasn't the drug that I took. It wasn't, you know, I was a cocaine and hookers and hotel rooms sort of a junkie. You know, I wasn't a Subutex with ass drugs in prison.
And toilet bowl water.
toilet bowl water. Nothing had ever looked so good, man. And I went to sleep bawling my eyes out with the need to do this, and I was there crying. I cried myself to sleep, and not from being in jail, but just from like drug cravings are really unpleasant, right? Like get a drug craving, it's so unpleasant, and the craving goes on until you shoot up drugs. It doesn't matter how long it takes. If it takes 2 days to get to the drugs, then you're just going to do it and do whatever you need to do until the craving's over. And so I was sitting there like with this awful craving going on, just dying for any sort of drug. And it just sort of occurred to me, like, if you think that looks good, like there's a problem here. Like there's a problem. It's a time for a change. Like, you're going to be in here for a few years anyway. Like, why don't we turn that boat around?
What was studying like in prison there? What was that like? Being able to learn how to do the trading course?
They just sent it in. I just did university course. And
Sweet.
They sent it all in. Yeah, Australian prisons are pretty good compared. Actually, they're just like every other prison. They're all run by American companies. They look pretty much the same worldwide.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
I can't.
It must have been a pretty good feeling getting out on that last stint there.
Getting out of jail is so good. Like if I start talking about it, I'll tear up. Like it is the best feeling, the strongest emotion you could possibly imagine. And so what happens is the years count down to sort of months, and then the months go to weeks, and the weeks go to days, and you get like the last couple of days in prison is just really, really nervous because like, you don't want to do something and fuck up and get stayed in there, and you don't want anyone to know because people who don't like you might fuck with you just so that you hit them and stay in jail, and so you don't want to lie to people, and you don't want to make a big deal out of it because someone who's doing 20 years, if you're getting out next week and skipping around, they might feel a bit stabby about that and justify it. So. And then it comes down to minutes, and then getting out of jail is this whole process. You get your possessions back, and they move you here, and they move you to this side of jail, and they move you to that, and then eventually you see the gate start to roll up. It's like a roll up gate, and you start to see like it comes up really slowly, and eventually you can just drop and roll underneath. Like it's it's just not waiting for it to go up, and. It's a wonderful feeling. I've got a photo of that day. I'll send to you. Yeah,
dude, send it through because we'll if you're cool with it, we'll chuck it up probably right now into the YouTube.
Let me send it now.
You must have done some pretty interesting travel through that time as well, bro. With work through the porn industry stuff and
they used to have these porn industry conventions once a year. And it was like all my employees would all look forward to it all year. And it was like a 3-day bender with porn chicks and so much cocaine. Like you just can't possibly imagine. Like we used to throw away like half an ounce of cocaine at the end of the trip every time. We like order too much, and just a ridiculous bender. It was my reward to my staff for a whole year of war.
You'd take them all over.
Go to Las Vegas for the porn convention, use as much blow as you want. It's on the company. And, these were all computer nerd guys, and they're banging porn chicks 2 at a time. And they thought it was great.
Can you write cocaine off on tax?
I tried.
Yeah, you did. So you just asked the dealer for a receipt, or?
Yeah, no, I think we just called that a cash miscellaneous expenses.
Miscellaneous cash expense.
Yeah, that was. But that was actually the porn industry was a fun industry.
Yeah, that would have been pretty exciting to be mucking around with. That would have been wild.
But it's funny. It was an accounting exercise. Like I have an aptitude for maths, and you wouldn't see porn. You wouldn't see much porn day to day. It was all about cash flow tracking and buying advertising, and it's no different than modern affiliate marketing, I guess. It was like,
Yep.
yeah, that's all it was.
You can run that principle across any sort of online business and essentially
It's not much different than what I do with the trading courses, to be honest. It's the same basic thing. I'm at about 1% of the scale that I was back then. But.
Yeah. And I think being incredibly good at the maths and stuff and just generally enjoying is what sort of drew you to trading as well?
I'd always been jealous of, my sisters are both doctors, and I'd always been jealous of people who had an answer to that question. What do you do?
Yep.
What do you do? Oh, a little bit of this, a bit of that, a bit of a hustler, sell a bit of gear, whatever. And I'd always found that question incredibly awkward, and I'd always had this feeling of impending doom about whenever I'd get a hustle going. I'd be running some good credit card fraud, or I'd be lending money to some drug dealers that are doing well, or I'd be doing this or I'd be doing that. There'd always be this feeling that it was all about to die, and I'd need to find the next hustle pretty quickly because this one was surely going to die. Something was going to go wrong soon. So I always had this feeling of impending doom about my life, which was another way of saying I lived in constant fear. And I didn't want to live in constant fear. I wanted just a regular, like I don't make a fraction of the money that I used to make.
Yep.
I have enough.
Yep. But it's a pretty good lifestyle now.
It's a nice lifestyle, but it's probably not. I know your lifestyle. Mine's no different than yours. Like, you lift a bit, you do a bit of training, and I run a small business, no different than you, really.
Yeah. No, that's cool. What brought you a bit off track, but always curious? What got you over to jiu-jitsu from kung fu? What sort of sparked your interest to find out what this ground fighting's all about?
So I was reasonably good at kung fu. I was like, I've been doing it for 20 odd years. Had a lot of fights. I've had well over 100 street fights. I had absolutely no doubts about my ability to beat someone up if we're throwing hands on the street. That's not very difficult. And for me to go from where I was to the next level up from that, for me to get the level, to go from being someone who could beat dummies on the street fairly easily to being someone who could beat actual professional fighters was a whole other level that for me to be honest with myself. But when I got clean, I started to be honest with myself. And like, okay, I beat up any sort of guy that you're going to encounter in a bar, but how would I go against a professional? Probably not very good was the answer. And I thought I wanted to do something legit, and I wanted to be legit because I was in this process of making my life legit. And so I thought I'd be much happier being at the bottom of a big process rather than at the top of a small pond. And I found that I'd expected myself to be naturally talented at jiu-jitsu, which I wasn't.
That first day roll, right? We're going to put you with that girl over there, Scott.
Will beat me up on the first day. She's wearing a pink gi and just Lil. She's really
bubbly and giggly through the whole time while she's beating you up.
Giggly and very attractive and just kick the shit out of me.
I think that's happened to all of us, Scott. At that club.
But I like I'm drawn to things where you have a long arc to the payoff. Where like lifting, like you're not gonna be any good at lifting from day one. You're years away from doing anything significant. I like that. I like the idea of settling in and just every year you're 5% better or whatever. And I like that. And I'm not out to up and try 20 different things. I want to try one or two things in my life and just settle it.
Just be really good and enjoy the challenges that come with it, right?
Well, just enjoy the challenges. Like I'm a very average jiu-jitsu practitioner. I'm okay.
I think you go pretty well.
We're about the same. We're okay. Like, but none of us are. Neither of us could be with the best will in the world. None of us are going to be winning black belt world championships, are we?
No, not at all. Maybe Big Anton, maybe.
Anton can.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And you, purple belt still, isn't it? Did you get your brown belt yet?
No, I got a purple belt still.
Yeah. Yeah, sweet. That's pretty cool. And you can sneak in and get a little bit of training at the moment still?
Yeah.
You're in there?
Mate's living room. And as long as we're quiet about it.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think one of my fondest lifting memories, bro, would have to be your 300 kilo deadlift too, by the way. I remember training you for that training run, and that was incredible. The whole time having to hold you back because you're a lunatic. My favorite.
I didn't think I would do it a week before.
Yeah, I think we pulled 285. I deliberately held you right back to maybe 285 a week out or something like that. And you're like, let me fucking go. I'm like, no, trust the fucking process, bro.
I learned a lot from that. The idea of that it's an arc and that you don't want to be lifting, before I started training with you, I just go in and lift as much as I could all the time.
Yep.
And I would never get any better.
Yep.
And I was like those guys that would go to the gym for years and years and years. You'd see them at the gym and they're still benching the same. But what I found when I started lifting with you is that I've been able to improve my lifting continuously. Even now that I train a fraction of what I used to, I can still bench way more than I could when I was training with you.
Right.
But objectively, I keep improving. Like I keep adding weight every. I could bench 300 any day of the week now. I could dead 300 any day of the week.
Yep. Yeah, that's pretty cool, isn't it? Absolutely. I think if we do some digging through the YouTubes, we'll find that really good video of you doing a deadlift till you vomited.
Yeah,
that's always a favorite. That's always a favorite of mine, of yours. That would have been some pretty fun training back in that space, back in that time. That old school bio labs with Hey How and all that.
I found it really harmful training.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong, but I remember I was training with Anthony, who and Hey had him just about in tears one day because he couldn't pick 240 up off the floor. I was like, it's like 2010 or something, it was like a long time ago. And it was like he was really trying. It just wouldn't come up off the floor, and he's yelling at him, calling him a piece of shit. And fucking get it up, you piece of shit, you're useless. I can't believe we're paying you to speak to us this way.
Yep.
And the last straw with that kind of training was, we came back in New Year's, and he was yelling at us for having Christmas dinner as a cheat meal. I didn't have a cheat meal. I had chicken and rice and broccoli for Christmas dinner. And I'm like, well, you're a fucking weirdo. Like,
he is exactly like that.
Fuck you. And that's the last. This wasn't Damon. This was his brother, by the way. But
Adam.
Damon, But I was like, okay, well, that's the last dollar that you'll get off me as a paying customer, because that's just fucking weird.
Yeah, you got to fucking enjoy yourself at the same time too, right?
What's it for? Like, I mean, with like, I'm so prone to obsession. Like, like that day that I lifted 300. What was far more enjoyable was watching my friends in that team environment. Paul's deadlift that day lives forever in my memory.
Yeah, that was that was an awesome comp.
It was an awesome comp.
There was 20 of us, I think, from we were Newstead Barber back then, lifting down the Gold Coast, all sort of staying down there and whatnot. And everyone outperformed. It was unreal.
Pride in your own achievements is very short lasting. Like if I'm going to say, wow, I deadlifted 300, I set this record. Like 2 days later, that was all gone. All my enjoyment of that was all. And if I'm going to go down that, then next time I have to do it again, and I have to do it bigger, and I have to do it more, and it's still scratching it. It's like scratching a mosquito bite, right? Like it feels really good while you're scratching it, and then you stop scratching it, and twice it's fucking itchy. And I know people who've spent their entire adult lives going down holes like that, thinking that if I could only put 20 kilos on my bench, I'll be finally happy forever.
Yeah, that's
that doesn't make any sense.
No, because you're going to want another 20 when that 20's done.
Either you're enjoying the process or you're not. Like, and what I like about what you've accomplished with your team is the environment is so good. Like you've got an environment where the extraordinary becomes every day. Like I walk into your gym and the record wall, it's like Australian record, world record. There's just too many to count. Like there's not even enough room on the walls for the records you set. And there's ordinary people doing that. Like I'm no genetically gifted freak athlete. and neither are most of the people in your gym. Look at Captain Pete, like he's out the strongest old motherfucker in history.
Yeah, dude.
I mean, it's just ridiculous. Ordinary people achieving extraordinary things through the environment. Like everyone wants to feel like you're not a lone explorer. You're a fellow traveler, and I want to feel good about the achievements of the people who I'm training with. My own achievements. Who cares? Like I lift this, I bench that, whatever. Who cares really? All I've ever got out of lifting is completely destroyed hip joints.
That's all we all got.
Yeah, there's always something beaten up. Man, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the stuff I love, particularly, training with the Epic crew and watching all of our crew at Fortitude, man, is just enjoying seeing what they lift. Being around it. And it doesn't even matter what's on their bar. Like, whatever their best is their best, and that's fucking great to watch. And you fucking love those sessions.
And you taught me that it's not about the weight. It's about constant improvement and following the program and doing something you couldn't do yesterday and settling in for the long term and bringing a kind of commitment to it that regular people can't bring and becoming a fucking superhero. Like
and just enjoying that absolute fun journey that we're on through it. Hey.
Yeah, I love lifting. I love lifting with you guys. That's the best.
Oh, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Times of my life.
Once this is all said and done, mate, it'd be good to get you whenever you can get back to Brisbane again sometime between now and whenever the border opens. We'll have to get you back in that gym, which would be sick. What's, man, not in layman's terms, I mean, I've been definitely off topic a little bit, but it's been interesting watching your COVID stuff. Like, how messed up are we as a business world and stuff? What do you think's going on there?
So there's so many different ways that it could play out. So anyone who tells you that they've got an absolute certainty of what's going to happen, really is probably trying to make themselves feel better by thinking they know what's going to happen. So what is the most likely thing that's happening is that companies and businesses have got holes in their balance sheet. They were expecting to earn revenue, and they haven't got that revenue, and they've got expenses that haven't gone away. So there's holes, and the governments will do their best to paper over the cracks in those holes by printing money and giving away free credit, and that's what governments are doing. Some countries will do better at that than others. Americans tend to have a philosophical objection to giving money away. Australia's doing okay at it, but you can tell, being in the position that you're in, that it's helping some, but it's not filling the hole, right?
Mm.
So there will be a hole in our income, and there will be a decrease in the amount of money available, which means that people will have less money to spend on stuff. Now, Australia is in an interesting position because we've had a property market that's gone straight up for 40 years. And there's probably an unsustainable amount of debt. What I'm watching closely is how does this affect the Australian property market? Does it? Australia could be okay because it's a relatively well-managed country. America probably won't be okay because it's a relatively poorly managed country. I would say if you look at the history of other financial panics, the shortest ones last about 18 months, and the longest ones last a decade, and the average one lasts 3 years. So I would expect we're somewhere between, and whether they're worst case or best case depends on the quality of the policy response. So the JobKeeper allowance to keep people in their jobs is reasonably good policy. The extra unemployment benefit is reasonably good policy. If governments wait, it doesn't have the same effect, and the government's done it quickly. So my opinion is that that we're looking at not the worst case scenario, but we're certainly looking at a major interruption, which is best case a 2-year bear market in stocks, and probably a 5-year bear market minimum in property. And that's a best case. The worst case is if they fuck it up, and so what happens when businesses go broke is, like, for example, Virgin just went broke. When it all restarts again, we're going to have just Qantas. And you remember when we had just Qantas before, airline prices were through the roof. And it was and it was effectively a tax on everyone. Every time you want to go somewhere, you have to pay an extra $300 or $400 that you don't have to pay these days. So there's going to be, so the question for governments is, do you want those businesses to survive? If you want them to survive, you have to print money and credit.
Yeah.
And if you do print money and credit, then that comes with consequences for the amount of total money, which means we're going to be devaluing the Australian dollar, which also has consequences. And all this lives in this very complicated positive feedback loop where you change one input and then all the outputs change, your currency changes, and that makes you more attractive. So it's a very, very difficult thing to predict. But this smells like, to me, more than the usual garden variety panic. Like in 2008, in 2008, was a major world panic, but it didn't really hurt us too much here. Like I don't know about you, but I don't know any of my friends have lost their jobs. I know heaps of my friends have lost their jobs too.
Yeah.
It seems to me to be worse than 2008. It also seems to me to be better than the 1930s depression, because in the 30s they waited for like 4 years before they started printing money and trying to paper over the cracks in money and credit. And so that was the reason the Great Depression happened was a failure of policy response. It wasn't just that the stock market crashed. It was that they thought, oh, well, we'll just let all these businesses go broke, and then businesses went broke, and then no one had any food, and then everything was fucked. So we're not going to have that worst case scenario, but we're probably not going to have the best case scenario, which is like 2008 either. What I think the highest probability outcome is a stock market decline of between 50 and 65%, and a property market decline. Best case scenario 25%. Worst case scenario in other bubble markets in 2008 that crashed, like Ireland and Spain and UK, the 45% peak to valley in average, 30% in the good stuff, and 60-70% in the crap stuff. So there's some property in Australia, like the western suburbs of Sydney, that sells for buy a house in the western suburbs of Sydney in a war zone for $1 million. Like that shit ain't going up. But you know what I mean. So you can maybe expect 30% off the good stuff, and worst case scenario, and 70% off the rubbish that's overpriced. Would you say there'd be opportunity for people who are ready to make a bit of risk and try and buy things at the bottom? Okay, so so this is an interesting question. The exact bottom of any market, you can tell it by the fact that you absolutely would not be willing to invest. So anytime people, when the stock market was down a couple of weeks ago, I got 4 or 5 calls that day asking us, which should I buy? I'm ready to buy it. That is an absolute sign that we're not at a bottom. In the bottom in 2009, I didn't have the guts to buy stocks, and no one that I knew, even the professionals and the stockbrokers I knew, no one had the balls to do it. And I trade cryptos a little bit, and when cryptos fell after their big bull market in 2017, when they hit the bottom at 3,000, I didn't have the guts to buy. And so you're going to know the bottom, because it'll seem like that you'll tell your friends that you're thinking about buying another house or buying some shares, and they'll tell you, are you crazy? And you won't want to do it. If it feels like you've got a good deal and you're just being clever, you probably haven't found them.
Probably not a good deal.
But where I would start is probably about 50% down. 50% is the average bear market, right? So are we in an average bear market, or are we a little worse than average? We're probably a little worse, but they don't get too much worse than that. So if you started buying at 50% down, that would probably be not the worst tactic. But buying now today, geez, I wouldn't do it.
Stay away.
Because no one knows. Every company's lost money, right? Like how many of the small businesses do you know are going to go broke? I would have thought a lot of them, right?
Huge percentage. You just got to drive past them on the street, whatever it is, coffee shop, bike shop. Man, they're not going to bust.
And what about if that's happening to small businesses? What about big businesses? Virgin 3 weeks. Like that was a good effort, wasn't it? You fucking idiot. Like what if actual big businesses go that way? Like insurance companies, all kinds of, you want to wait and see for some really bad shit to happen and go, wow. You want to have at least a couple of instances of going, oh wow, I'm glad I didn't buy then. Oh, I'm glad I didn't buy then. And then the moment that you want to buy is when it feels like, oh fuck, I'm glad I never bought any of this shit. because historically things bounce very hard from that final bottom. Historically, they tend to bounce like 60-70% in a couple of months.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so timing the exact bottom is not necessary, but you certainly don't want to be writing something. There's nothing more emotionally painful than writing something down in a crashing market, whether it's property. Believe me, I've been there in all of them. Property, in stocks, in crypto, and anything. Once they fall, you just got to get out. Once they start to go, things are a body in motion, right? Like once they start going up, they tend to keep going, and when they start falling, they tend to keep falling. And and the falls work different than the gains, because greed is a very different emotion than fear, right? Like greed is comfortable. Like if your house is going up every year, how often do you check the price? You never check it. Like once a year, whatever. Like it's just something comfortable at the back of the mind. I'm getting rich now. Like of course I am. But when shit starts to fall, when your stocks start crashing, you're checking that shit every day. Like you're driving home. Like fear and greed are very, very different things. So the length of time that we spend going down tends to be much shorter than the length of time that we spend going up. But they go down so much faster. They go down 10 times fast.
Don't catch the falling sword, bro.
No.
I like your drawings that you've put on some of the tables and graphs. I have no idea what they are, but I do see swords being caught. That doesn't look good.
Doesn't look good. It's not a good idea. Some of the worst things I've ever done have been catching.
Yeah, I was just going to say, have you been caught out on anything before?
Oh like many times. Many times. I try and learn from my mistakes and do it a little bit better this time, and I'm doing okay this time around.
Yes, that's cool. Did you see it coming?
No, I didn't see it at all, but I was positioned for it, which is different. So I mean, my trading rules are purely mechanical. So if something makes the lowest close in 50 days, I sell it. That's it.
Yep.
No,
yes.
I don't like to have an opinion about things. I like to just do what I'm supposed to. Just better way.
Put your rules in place and try to leave emotion at the door. Don't be caught up in whatever you're doing there.
Yeah, and it's just too hard when you bring emotion into it. Like the emotions that stock trading and investing in anything brings up, like more so with houses than anything, because you get emotionally attached to it, right? Like, it's best to leave all that stuff out of it, you know.
Yeah, sweet. So what's the next few months look like for you, bro? For sort of, I guess, lockdown life, playing with the new junior burger, trying to get some sleep somewhere.
I get plenty of sleep.
Your poor wife is not getting any.
Yes, I would like to come back to Australia as soon as there are no planes now, right? Like, so even if they lifted the lockdown, and Thailand's doing pretty good. There's like 50 cases today. It's pretty good.
That's good.
Australia's doing pretty good.
Yep.
I want to come home. I just can't. I love to sit on the beach for a month.
Up at Noosa somewhere, bro.
Yeah, for sure. That's exactly my plan. Precisely my plan.
Sweet. Now, bro, we've got 10 questions for you. They're rapid fire questions. So you have to go first thing that pops into your mind. Are you ready?
Ready.
Favorite book?
Principles.
Who wrote that?
Ray Dalio.
Sweet. Now, you're in a plane crash. Plane crashes. You and one other person survive. You're going to survive on an island for 40 days before you're rescued. Who will you spend that with? They can be alive and dead, or dead. Or make-believe.
That was my boy Anthony.
Yes. Now, on that island, you're going to be hungry. You're a big guy. You want to stay big. Are you ready to eat a person?
Absolutely.
Yes. Dog or cat? Dog or cat? I know this answer. Dog. What superpower would you like to have?
Mind control.
Yeah.
A very popular one.
What type of apple are you, Scott?
I am one of those expensive crossbred Japanese motherfuckers that are like half pear, half apple. Like, so like $3 an apple.
Is the tooth fairy real?
No.
What is your secret talent?
I can juggle knives.
What?
Carving knives.
Really?
How
Can we
many?
get a video?
Do you have a video? Can you make us a video? Oh, here we go. Oh,
Well, I that was juggling calculators. I want to see knives.
Hold on.
Last two questions. Who would win in a fight, Batman or Superman?
Superman. You got Superman. What's wrong?
exactly.
And then, now this is an easy question for you. This is super easy, but who's the best, Jonny or myself? It's clearly Jonny.
Really, Johnny.
Yeah, see? Told you. There's always Jonny. There's always Jonny.
Thanks, bro.
Mate, thank you so much for your time today. Obviously, very, very interesting story. We'll get this chucked up in a couple of weeks. Where can people find you?
You can find me at scottphillipstrading.com.
We'll chuck that in the show notes for everyone.
Absolutely. We'll chuck up some of your videos and stuff.
And always a pleasure, Johnny. I love you, man.
Love you too, bro.
Thank you so much,
man.
man.
Soon, man.
Stay
See you,
safe.
man.